Hello and welcome to Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV, brought to you by the Center for Constitutional Governance. I am Isaac Wagala, your host. As a nation and as a people, do we still have the collective soul and the conscience to push back against state-sanctioned excesses? Well, on today's edition of Focus on Parliament, we interrogate the question: what is the real cost of freedom for the Ugandan citizen? Joining me now to put perspective to this conversation is a panel of distinguished personalities whom I now have the honor and the pleasure to introduce to you, our esteemed viewers. Let me start from my immediate left. Is Professor Mwambusa Debesa, an eminent historian and a renowned political commentator. Professor, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Say hello to the viewers.
Thank you, and good morning to the viewers. Glad to be here on this civic space, a space that is uncensored, uncontrolled, and free from any encumbrances, so that we discuss freely issues of national importance.
Thank you, Professor, for joining us this morning. Next to Professor is the Honorable Paul Mwelu, a former legislator and a member of the opposition National Unity Platform. It's a pleasure to have you, Honorable. Say hello to the viewers.
Thank you. Hello, viewers. I'm delighted to be here to discuss our human rights situation in the country. Thank you.
Many thanks indeed. And of course, last but not least is the gentleman, Mr. Apollo Tusime, a senior journalist covering Parliament and a member of the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association. It's always a pleasure to have you, Apollo. Say hello to the viewers.
Good morning, Isaac, and it's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to an interesting conversation.
Many thanks indeed.
Thank you.
Apollo, before we get into the conversation, you recently celebrated the World Press Freedom Day. Could you comment on the state of press freedom in Uganda?
Oh, yes. Press Freedom Day, World Press Freedom Day is a time to reflect on the situation of the freedom of press and appreciate the members of the public, the media practitioners who go out to inform us and entertain us. Unfortunately, this year's event came at a time when there are many questions around press freedom in Uganda, and it was reflected in a report that was released on that day by the Uganda Human Rights Network for Journalists, where it was highlighted that the situation, the environment, the press freedom environment in Uganda can be described as taking one step forward and two steps backwards. The global indices show that Uganda is among the 7 countries in the whole world currently who are in the red zone on matters of press freedom, including Ethiopia and Rwanda. And that tells you how bad the situation is as far as press freedom in Uganda is concerned. But what I would want also to highlight is that the state of press freedom, the environment we operate in as media practitioners, cannot be divorced from the general human rights situation in Uganda. The global rankings have also consistently showed that the human rights record for Uganda has been declining over the years. I think now, currently, we stand in 143 on the Human Rights Global Index 143, third position out of 180. And the human rights environment in this country is characterized by arbitrary arrests, the clampdown on the members of the press, the shutting down of media houses, the arrests involving opposition politicians, and now incidents of torture. That shows you how the press freedom is surviving, the environment in which it is surviving. So it's a matter of concern, and you must be very concerned when the people who should be reporting, who should be informing, are the ones who are now being targeted, and more so targeted by people in high authorities, because the reports indicate that the number one violators of press freedom are the members of the security agencies. And these are the people who hold guns, people who hold lethal power. And this has been recently reflected in the recent by-election in Kawempe North, where members of the press were deliberately targeted with an intention to stop them from informing, informing the world what was actually happening in that election. So I can authoritatively say that the press freedom in Uganda is not so good. It is under the media is under censorship, and that's not so good, especially when we are looking at a political season that is coming up, actually that we are in right now.
Thank you, Apollo, for sharing your reflections. And as Civic Space TV, we express our solidarity with you, the members of the Fourth Estate, as the guardians and torchbearers of the truth. Our esteemed viewers, for context regarding today's topic, exactly a week ago, on the first day of May, the CDF of our country's armed forces, also the first son, outraged and alarmed the country when he came out to report on the whereabouts, and he confirmed that he had indeed detained the chief security guard of the principal of the National Unity Platform, the Honorable Chagulanyi, in his basement. He further indicated that the purpose for his detainment was to instruct him in a local dialect, Lunyankole. And of course, as we all know, he has been subsequently arraigned in a court in Masaka to face trial on charges of simple robbery. But Professor, I want to ask you first. This is a very disturbing account of the abuse of power by a high-ranking officer of the state. Is there a pattern to this behavior? Do you think there is a method to this conduct?
Thank you. I think I will take this opportunity to share with the viewers the issue of military behavior or the behavior of the Chief of Defense Forces from the context of democracy. I think that is an indicator that there is a democracy deficit in this country. And if one were to put me to task to say, can you give indicators that there is the democracy deficit, before we look at this incident of, for example, ordering the arrest of some individuals and detaining them in Communicado for some time and even torturing them there, I would first say that there are those who misconceive or deliberately distort the definition of democracy and simply say democracy is only elections. And since there are elections, even if there is violence during elections or there are irregularities, but at least elections are held every 5 years, and therefore that is democracy. No, democracy is far, far, far bigger than that. Let's look at the elements of democracy. Yes, elections is one, but we have observance of human rights. Human rights, observance of human rights and freedoms is an element of democracy. So even if you have elections, if you don't have freedoms, then there is still democracy deficit. Then there is the question of balance of power. Are the different arms of government balanced, allowed to balance? If there is no balance of power, or what some people call checks and balances, then there is still a deficit in democracy. Then there is accountability. Political accountability this time, I'm not talking about even financial accountability. I'm talking about those who are entrusted with power, because in a democracy, those who are in power are just the trustees. They are holding power on behalf of the people. Is that power accountable to the citizens? Then there is a free press, which the colleague was talking about. Is there a free press to expose some abuse of power? Then there is citizens' participation. All citizens should participate in their governance one way or the other, not only through elections and stop at election day until 5 years. No, that is why we are citizens, we are not subjects. So, coming back to the CDF's actions of arresting somebody and again torturing somebody. So, when you look at all these elements of democracy I pointed out, that incident actually shows how we have a deficit in democracy. First of all, his freedoms were denied. He had the freedom to move, to talk, and not to be arrested. And even if he is arrested on some charge, he's not supposed to be tortured. But after torturing, the other institutions of the state have done little, if any. The judiciary is supposed, the law courts are supposed to uphold the freedoms of the people. But you saw how the magistrate allowed somebody who is tortured to be taken to prison without being taken to
Hospital.
to the hospital. And I'm told the law is very clear that such a person should not in that condition be taken to the hospital. So,
To the prison.
to the prison, sorry. Now, that means the democracy and human rights were not safeguarded in that respect. And there is no accountability. How does a CDF, a command of the army, now get involved in arresting somebody allegedly who participated in stealing some phone? That is not his duty. And therefore, that shows that there is no accountability to the people. That is flouting democratic systems. So when you look at the way people are beaten, the way people are imprisoned, and they have no access to their lawyers, and the way the whole government takes it lightly, the whole executive taking it lightly, we are not hearing anything from the president. We are not hearing anything from the spokesman of government, the minister in charge. We are not hearing anybody making a statement except the feeble one that appeared from the Office of the Human Rights Commission. And that means there are very many issues to do with democracy in this country. And one could clearly see that there is a democracy deficit and something must be done to reverse this trend. Because when you have those democratic deficits in a country, it is not only affecting democracy per se in terms of enjoying human rights and freedoms and participation and rule of law and things like that. It goes beyond that. It means the state is becoming weak. The strength of the state is not determined by the coercive power of the coercive forces. No. The strength of the state is determined by the legitimacy of the state in the eyes of the people. So when people see that they are not protected and there is no rule of law and there is flouting of rule of law, the state, the state machinery, the executive, the legislature, and other state agencies and the judiciary, they lose legitimacy. Once there is a legitimacy deficit now, added on to the bigger democracy deficit, then the state is weak. Here I'm talking about state-society relations. Now, when the state is weak, especially in emerging states like Uganda, there is an existential threat to the integrity of the state, and by extension, you can have a failed state in this country. And once there is a failed state, you know the consequences, worst of it being genocide.
Professor, in a minute before I move on to Honorable, many Ugandans are quite puzzled and for obvious reasons, outraged at the behavior of the CDF. What could be motivating him to do such a despicable act?
There is only one answer: impunity. He knows that he cannot be held accountable. And once somebody is in power, they say absolute power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Once you are in power and you are drunk with power, because he's already drunk with power, and you know that you cannot be reigned on by your the military authority, somebody above you, or you cannot be reigned on by the courts of law or by parliament, then you will behave like that. So behavior is conditioned by the circumstances. It is just not that you are behaving like that because you are necessarily mad or whatever. It is because the circumstances around you which allow impunity, allow you to do excesses that like he's doing. If he knew that he would be held accountable, that he would be punished for that, that he would be sanctioned for that, he would not be behaving like that. But if he allows, he goes away with it, that is impunity, he's going to do the worst from that.
Thank you, Professor, for your assessment. Honorable,
Yes.
the victim of this very despicable ordeal of torture and illegal detention, Mr. Sebufu, is the chief bodyguard of your party president, Honorable Kyagulanyi. I am sure you've had the opportunity as a party to process that ordeal and maybe try to devise a mechanism of response. What are you doing to respond to these excesses by the state?
Thank you. I think in such a public discourses where we are claiming space and base, to me, I think we need to look at a very bigger picture. Because you see, we intend at most of the time to focus on the symptoms. I want to start it from good the professor is here. You see, I've always argued, and I will do it again, that the security apparatus, or the army, the police, the coercive arms of the state, and these can be traced from the time when the colonialists came and took over, when we were colonized. They found the nation states which existed here, and they had existed for years before. When they governed us using the force of the gun to subdue, to oppress, and exploit, when they were granting independence to Uganda, they were supposed to decommission some of the tools of colonialism, which they had left, like the gun, it remained. In every instance, in whatever issues we have had in the country, the military has played a big role. Because if you look at all African states, the army, the police, they play a big role as coercive instruments of the state to oppress, subdue anybody who comes up. As Prof said, you realize that there is no accountability around power and policy in all issues which is taking place now. For instance, the law as is of course, when we're even making our constitution, it has a preamble. It reminds us of our history, the turbulent times we have had. But all those turbulent times which we have had, they are somehow connected to the gun. That whoever has the gun, he does not want accountability around the power and the policy on how actually we are moving. In my view, we would be looking at a revolutionary approach to engage into revolution to correct those holistically, not to look at just the symptoms. Because as we speak, we stand today, you all agree with me that as I studied the I offered the human rights at the university as one of the area of specialty of human rights, and I studied it. So when we study it, it tries to create the rights. It tells us our rights, the fundamental freedoms, are inherent. They accrue to us by virtue of being born. They are not granted to us by the state. That because there is a state, so it has granted human rights to me. They accrue to me by virtue of being born. And our customs and the customary law we had before the colonists I'm talking about, in a way, it had a way of preserving our rights because they respected them. So fast forward, when the 1995 Constitution was made, it mirrored the covenants we have. We have the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Right, and the one on Civil and Political Right, and among others, which actually looked at the need of all these rights. And they gave us a duty to domesticate them here in a country. And when you go to our constitution, it has all chapter dedicated to human rights. And it even says that these rights are non-derogable. They accrue to us by virtue of being born. But even God goes ahead to say that these fundamental rights are fundamental in nature, that they accrue to you by virtue of being born, and every organ of the state and the citizens have a duty to ensure the enjoyment of those rights. And that's why I say we need to take a broader approach, because these things everybody know. Every lawyer worth the name, those who are in the government, those who are in the army, they know these things because they told them unless they didn't appreciate them. So if that is, it even goes ahead to show under what circumstance can you derogate from someone's right when there is a procedure of court. When you look at that, I think Article 23 talks about personal liberty. The right to personal liberty is to the extent that you cannot deprive professor now, because here, even as we are here, if the show ended and you locked him in a room, it will be an illegal detention. You don't have the power. What I mean that you see, General Moaz has no power to lock anybody in his basement. That's an illegality. Clear apparent, it's an erroneous fact that he admits having done that. But two, and most importantly, the Criminal Procedure Code and the Police Act, it lays out a procedure of arrest. They teach them, that's why these things I don't want to keep on participating. Because I forgive me, not that I'm running away. Because these things are documented. The Police Act as a whole, the Criminal Procedure Code, talks on how an arrest is effected. The Police Act shows how someone is arrested. The law as is clear that in effecting arrests, the army has no business. If I've committed an offense, even if someone say once you do SFC, they have no business. But these things we kept on arguing when I was in the 9th Parliament. And I said, this SFC is not an organ of the army. It's not created by an act. You understand? So there's no way it can be like even have a budget. It is UPDF, which we know. By that time, the Minister of Defense was young. I could say we're going to come up with it, but they did not. So today, the arm terrorizing the people, it has no proper legal clothing, even within the Constitution. Because if you go, now the army says, first we're not involved. The police said, we are not involved. Then someone said, I'm the one in charge. They used the SFC. So all these human rights violations taking place now, as Prof said, They're about impunity because there are no circumstances which are permitted. Because when if I came to arrest you here, I have to, the procedure says I have to move my warrant card and say I'm detective so and so. You are under arrest, and I show you my warrant card, and then I have to inform you that you have a right to inform your relatives, and even to inform them where I'm taking you, so that is accorded. You understand? The constitution as is provides for medical, provides all these things are there, then in white and black. But now we are dealing with impunity. So the question which must be answered, because not that people don't know, even those who are in the government, that these documents are there and they exist. We were stretched, I think it was in the 9th or 10th Parliament, to come up with an act of Parliament on torture, the Human Rights Enforcement Act. To the extent that once an individual participates in human rights violations, that person can be held accountable as an individual. Of course, the other issue that you see, when an institution collapses and they can't go in the survival mode, the question would be, would the court entertain a suit against the son of the president who doesn't respect any institution of government? You know how he abused the parliament, and appropriated the money for him. It trumps on everybody's right.
Does that suggest that you're considering legal action against him in respect of?
Well, that has been mooted. You see, that has also been suggested in a way.
That calling them ridiculous.
That's what I'm talking about now. Now in this case,
as a perpetrator.
Now in this case,
but he's also the one who called them
anything clones. Yes,
clowns.
But now, what we are saying that as a political party, we're also looking at the law to file a suit against him as an individual, now that he owns up. That would mean, some people say, no, every institution of government has collapsed. But you can take power and you want to chase professor from government, but you have no issue. But if you file a suit and you mess it up, you understand, when there's a change of government, you can go under those circumstances. So for us, we are saying, we need to do our part. We make him to account. Because you see, you cannot go and torture the way you saw. Because what these guys are doing, they're actually killing a person. Because they return someone half dead. Because if they were electrocuted, they beat up your cells in the legs, the body is swollen. You said,
I think torture is non-derogable.
Yes, actually it is. Actually, it is. Even shaving off someone's beard, it is inhuman and degrading treatment, which the law does not allow. But in a country where, I think the question is, in a country where the law does not work, what do you do? You see, one time I was
forcing somebody to speak a certain language,
which, and actually for me, you see, I've always argued here with Professor privately that you see, when the states don't work, it is high time we look for our identities. You understand the politics of identity.
Fall back to identity.
We fall back to identity. So there are spaces where actually you would fight from. You will agree with me that now what is taking place here. I saw some people who are saying now, look, we are teaching him Runyankole. The people say, oh, now the Banyankole are under threat. The Banyankole now are being attacked. From my reason that way, it is an individual who the Banyankole have done nothing. Whereas they may have a sense of entitlement because they are in charge. You understand? But it is also the Baganda to raise up and say that an attack on one Muganda is an attack on all of them. You understand? Because our identity as Baganda, and it's up to the Masoga to say that an attack on Musoga or in the Muganda is also an attack on us. So that we mobilize in those spaces, because there apparently there's nothing you will do. They have the gun, they have all the oppressive machinery
and the court
and the court
and the parliament.
And parliament, that if you want any remedy, you have to go to them for a remedy, which they will not give. So it is high time we mobilize our people to know that we are an endangered species. Once they touch on a professor, his identity must rise up to say, no, we can agree on other things, but we cannot discuss human rights. Well, not even the question would be, so what are we discussing?
Thank you,
Whether some people
Honorable,
have rights or not.
for your reflections. Apollo,
Yes, please.
let me ask you this question. Are you concerned as a member of the Fourth Estate
Was a
by
Munyankole.
the president's
Even
inaction,
Even as a Munyankole.
the president's inaction or perceived indifference or apathy regarding the son's misconduct, gross misconduct as a military officer, but also as a citizen?
I am greatly concerned, and I think everyone should be concerned when the chief of the commander in chief is not showing concern for a matter that involves or that involves a CDF. And I think we are unfortunate that the CDF we have, like my colleagues here said, seems not accountable to the relevant government institutions. They talked about how he spoke against. He referred to members of parliament as clowns, and indeed they didn't have anything to do. They didn't do anything about it. That shows you how he seems
I'm scared
to be untouchable and can only be reigned on by the chief of the commander in chief.
Who is his immediate supervisor in any case?
In any case, I think it should be the Minister for Defense and Veteran Affairs, because that's where the office of the CDF falls. But it turns out it can only be the commander in chief who can reign on him. And when you ask me, I am concerned. Yes, I am concerned. He is not reigning on the CDF. But my other concern, which I think should also be our concern, is how these human rights violations are somehow now being normalized. For instance, Honorable Pomwil talked about the process of arrest, which is well stipulated in our books, the law books. But now, as we speak, it is now becoming normal that arrests must involve
abductions.
No. Must involve armed men coming with, we call them drones, at any time, even in the deep of the night. They pick their targets and they go. And after arrests, bad as they are, you don't hear from the victims for 3 days, a week, or weeks, or even months. I'm saying it is now becoming so normal. That's my biggest concern. Look at the recent arrests involving especially opposition leaders. That's now the manner of arrest. That's the way they are all arrested. Then later, they will either be dumped somewhere. They will be declared missing. Then we will speak. Then later, they will be dumped somewhere. And then, luckily, you may find them alive. If you're unfortunate, you'll find them dead. Now, that is one of the biggest concerns, which I think should be the concern of everyone here. Then another
by the way, concern including police, because I think last week we had a news item where the SFC arrested people,
That the police station.
dumped them at a police station. When the OC asked them what crime they had committed or what procedure, he was also beaten.
Yeah.
And nothing has been done so far. So even the police
No.
should be concerned.
My second concern is how even the relevant bodies that are charged with speaking against these violations are now becoming so silent. That's another concern, I think, that we should also look at. He's talking now about, they've talked about the judiciary. Now, it is also becoming very common. It is so common now for people to be, tortured, brought to court, and then they are sent to prison. You know of the case of Kakwenza. You know of Kakwenza was lucky, and then he escaped. There are many examples of people who have been tortured, but they are brought before the judges or magistrates, but then they are later sent on remand or sentenced to what. When actually, like Honorable Mwiru said, who is a lawyer, according to the law, no justice or judge or magistrate should continue prosecuting anyone who has a matter related to torture. That's in our laws. Another concern is the silence. The silence, at first we could speak against these violations, and we are speaking. But look at how now people in government, for instance, you talked about it here, are not speaking about this matter of a person who has been in illegal detention, and the CDF comes up and says, "Oh, he's here with me." But people have that fear. They fear to speak, and even this fear is, I want to admit that even us who are in the media, there is censorship in the media, self-censorship in the media. There are things we cannot do. What we fear to write, to publish. Let me tell you, that is another big concern, that we have people who are going through these incidents of human rights violations, and people are now starting to fear to speak about these things. Religious leaders, how many religious leaders have come out to speak against torture or human rights violations? They are continually, refraining from speaking about these matters. But I had to also bring out the issue of what these people talked about, impunity. I don't know if you have noticed that even now we have people instead of coming out to condemn, they are actually cheering. I don't know if you follow what Honorable Barum Bargahar has been speaking, celebrating and cheering on these serious matters of human rights. And we have even, we also saw what happened when journalists were battered and brutalized in the Kawempe, how some people, even in government, would cheer. Those are also. So I think when bad things are happening, and then now you have people cheering, then you must understand that's
and the society generally is not outraged.
Yes,
people should be outraged. We are going nowhere. What he's pointing out, all state institutions that are supposed to safeguard rights. Parliament is not doing its work. Judiciary is not doing its work. Police not doing its work. Human Rights Commission not doing its work. IGG not doing its work. Everybody is abusing power and nobody is doing anything. There is this lady, an elderly lady who is put on NTV. NTV on Friday, there is that program, Dose of Laughter.
Zunguru.
Zunguru. There is a lady who says, tugoyingewa
Tugoyingewa.
omuntu abantu bagoyingewa, so I think tugoyingewa.
That's what let me conclude. That's what I was saying. You could hear the statements from the public when Honorable Mariam Wangadia issued that statement. People were, yes, appreciating her for the courage. But why would they appreciate her for doing what she's supposed to do? That means that many people who would have spoken, who would have come out to speak against these human rights violations, are now retreating, which is very, very, very dangerous. But finally, Isaac and colleagues, my final concern is how these people who are doing these things have quickly forgotten where we've come from. How these human rights violations actually culminated into a war that brought them to power. They fully understand how dictatorships have fallen, how people who had power, who wielded power at one point, were powerless, and their power did not help them. How during the Amin regime, people, I read about people like Butabika, Maria Mungu, Mustafa Adisi, and others who wielded power at that time, how they really ended. How at some hour or time T, they lost power and they ended into a miserable life. So I think they are not good students of history. They should have learned that misuse of power can actually cannot be sustained. And my fear is that even we, the innocent, when that time comes, we become victims.
They want to teach Runyangole.
Thank you, Apollo, for sharing your insights on the program. Focus on Parliament now takes a short break. Do stay with us. We'll see you back shortly.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back. You are still watching Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV. In this segment, we continue the discourse regarding the deteriorating human rights situation in the country and how best it can be redressed. Professor, let me engage you first. Does it concern you that there is a growing sense of apathy from the population who have now, since out of frustration, begun to get numb to the injustices that are happening? And what could this portend?
Yeah, there is a sense of that, and that is why earlier on I was saying it is reflected in the statement of that lady, that elderly lady on Zungururu, saying that abantu bagoyengewa. So we are now living in a state of abantu bagoyengewa, because the state institutions that are supposed to safeguard the rights of citizens are now also under captivity. They are not functioning as they are supposed to do in order to safeguard the rights and freedoms of citizens. Definitely not the judiciary, definitely not Parliament, definitely not the IGG's office, not Human Rights Commission office, not even CID, not police. I don't know whether even the cabinet is in charge, because some members of cabinet, including the Minister of Internal Affairs, General Kahindo Tafire, I have heard him also despondent and saying, we don't know who arrested, we don't know who those people are, we don't know who deploys them. And the minister responsible for internal affairs is also saying, I don't know who are those people in Kawempe. Then you see where issues have reached. So that is the general atmosphere, the general feeling of powerlessness. And when people become powerless, they either turn religious, they just pray to God to solve the problems because they are powerless, they are insecure, they cannot do anything. But it can also be bomlang again, that when people reach that point of no return, of abantu bagoyingewa, since there is no recourse to any state institution to rein on some people's arbitrary abuse of power, arresting people with impunity, torturing people with impunity, now psychological torture that you are teaching people a language, forcefully, and people just comment casually, and the people in power are not taking it seriously. People should take it seriously. Ironically, I heard the President Museveni, on UTV, but was being interviewed by a reporter of Russian television. He, Museveni that is, was castigating the behavior of the Ukrainian state, forcefully making Russian speakers in Ukraine to speak Ukrainian language and abandon their language. And he was furious against it. Now here is the CDF also openly, blatantly, unashamedly saying that he arrested somebody and was teaching him to speak Runyankore, and that he would release him only after he has learnt at least 5 proverbs of Runyankore. And
his father has told him to release.
And although that one seems to be casual, it has far-reaching implications to society like Uganda, where identity politics is still sensitive, is still rife in such a country, that even if he probably was not teaching him the language, the mere fact that it was mentioned by somebody as high-ranking as the CDF, it has got far wider implications on the body politic of this country. And I thought that government should have come up, or the commander-in-chief should have come up to rein on the CDF, and also maybe to do damage control and explain it that it possibly was an individual statement. It does not represent the policy of government, because it can be taken to be policy when it is spoken by none other than the overall the command of the army, and government does not come up to condemn it. So anyway, going back at your question of the level of despondency in the country, the level of powerlessness, in the sense that There is no, the government institutions that are supposed to safeguard the human rights, they safeguard the freedoms, safeguard the interests of citizens are not functional, and they seem to be also giving up. You imagine Parliament being called clowns, and they keep quiet, and they start laughing sheepishly, and they do nothing about that. That legitimizes Parliament in the eyes of the people. So people have not understood how the legitimization of the state comes up. It comes up in the state institutions, arms of government, not functioning when they are supposed to be functioning. And the issues are in the public now that there is social media and the traditional media. They are bringing these things to the public. And there is frustration. And you know, when people are frustrated, they can do anything. So you see this one even reflected in the elections. Imagine LC1, which is not so competitive. People are killing each other in an election, which is even internal to the party. And you see people abusing authority with impunity. They were RDCs or former RDCs or whatever, holding sticks and violating the rights of citizens to vote. I had Doi Tanga, the chairman of the Electoral Commission, also lamenting. He was actually lamenting also. He was more or less like, I want to get to go in Gewa. How can an RDC, a small RDC man, somewhere there, interfering with an election exercise, which includes the president himself, and the RDCs are doing it with impunity, after all, who... and I think it is the CDF who made a statement on his Twitter account or X account. Say, what will you do to me? I think he was referring to Chagulanyi. What can you do to me? There is nothing you can do. In other words, he was also saying the law courts can do nothing. And they have done nothing. Instead they have accepted what he did. And they allowed somebody to go tortured and go to prison. He was telling maybe the judiciary as well as Parliament, what can you do to me? He was telling the police, what can you do to me? He was telling the citizens, what can you do to me? I have all the power, I have all the authority. But one, state the legitimacy. You see, democracy is also about legitimacy of the state. That is one cardinal of democracy, that the state must be legitimate. So, if one state arm, the one arm of the state, legislature, is frustrated, and they are called clowns, and they just laugh sheepishly, and the judiciary is cowed down, and the police is also cowed down. Really, the other day, I think the chief of the commander of what? No, the one of intelligence.
ISO.
No. This is Magambo.
The director
CID.
CID. The director of CID was also told to behave. That please, don't you know I am above you? So state institutions that are supposed to safeguard are frustrated. Citizens are frustrated. And you know, when people are frustrated, that translates into their behavior. So they can behave in a manner that is not constitutional. They can behave in such a manner that can lead to the disintegration of the state. This is an existential threat to the integrity of the state. Uganda is a young country, 130 years old. It was carved out of different ethnic groups. They have
state, not ethnic groups.
Oh, they were ethnic groups, really. They were ethnic groups, but they have their identities, and they still keep their identities, and they seem to be somehow primarily identifying themselves with these ethnic groups. So those who are in power those who are ruling us should be sensitive, not be insensitive. We should be sensitive and build the nation so that this country, the different communities of this country, the different identity communities in this country, gradually learn to live together. But when you make insensitive statements like I'm teaching people to learn Runyankore, that is being insensitive. And I don't know why the state has kept quiet. I don't know why those in the government have kept quiet. They cannot comment on it. It looks a very small thing, but it is not small, because in a country like this one of ours, where even people are sensitive about dignity. You know, Uganda is a dignity sensitive country, a community. Different communities are very sensitive about their dignity. And we have different identities. We have got ethnic identities, we have got religious identities, we have got very many identities who are very dignified, and they feel when you injure their dignity, you know, people, listeners and the colleagues here, you should know that one of the causes of conflicts, and violent conflicts at that, is the question of dignity. That's dignity and honor. People have not looked at that issue. It is one of the causes. Normally people think it is about resource sharing. It is about inequality. But dignity and status are equally important. When somebody feels his dignity is being encroached upon, is violated, violating the dignity of an individual or a community. Now, in this case, it is even violating the dignity of communities. I heard the teacher of Buganda tongue in cheek saying, oh, they are teaching somebody to speak Runyankore. That was the teacher when he was opening the Ruchiko. So it was tongue in cheek, but you see, it has got very big meaning. So I would want to advise and call upon those in the power or those in the political class also to be sensitive about the dignity, the honor, and the status of individuals and identity communities in Uganda, because we don't want to have dignity wars in Uganda also. And people feel bad. And we have a history, by the way, when Milton Obote overthrew Kabaka and Uganda became a republic, there was an onslaught or violation of the dignity of those who cherished their kingdoms. And Bulange, which was the seat of a traditional monarch, was called the Republic House. You see, that was a violation of the dignity of a community. And people felt that injury. When you get that injury on the heart, it is not easy to heal. And so, let's not again, under this frustration and the politics of verbal speaking anyhow, being insensitive, and create that situation. But finally, to comment on your question of frustration and people feeling this resignation, you know, because different institutions of the state are not safeguarding their dignity, safeguarding their rights, safeguarding their interests, then people feel resigned. Now, when people feel resigned, it looks as if they have left the public space and have gone into the private space. It is dangerous. It is dangerous when you have people retreating into the private instead of coming up to say something. In my language, in my culture, they have been told, including by people like my father. I learned some of these things from my father, a very old man of 106 years old is now. When they were hunting, they used to hunt. In fact, he has hunted lions even. He has hunted lions. The last lion he hunted, an elderly person, his uncle actually. There was a lion. It was in a small bushy place. It had hidden in a small shrub, and they had surrounded it. And the old man, who was maybe in his 70s or whatever, came. He found these young people had already surrounded the lion. And he asked them, has it made any noise? Has it roared? They told him no. He says, go home. If a lion doesn't roar, if you attack it and it gets in this crowded place, it will injure not less than 10 people. But once it roars, you can attack. Don't attack a lion that has not made any noise.
Thank you, Professor, for your insights.
That analogy is very serious. When you hear people retreating into privacy and speaking in whispers, and they appear to be having nothing to do, abantu bagoingewa, when they come out frustrated, they might even come out in a manner that is not controllable, and there are no institutions to go to, recourse institutions to safeguard them. We can have the disintegration of this country. We can have more violence, which nobody wants. And therefore, please, institutions of the state, whether the judiciary, whether the parliament, whether IGG, Human Rights Commission, Equal Opportunities Commission, the police, don't keep quiet. Speak up. If we don't speak up and this boil bursts, all of us will smell the boil.
Thank you, Professor. Honorable.
Yes.
You are in the middle of your pre-election calendar activities. You are mobilizing people to register, to participate in the forthcoming election amidst a very challenging environment, given the current state of the prevailing human rights situation in the country. Do you consider this to be a response to the state-sanctioned excesses? Are you satisfied that you can actually conduct a free and fair election, given the situation?
Well, there is nothing which can be conducted in lawlessness. The Supreme Court of the country has ever held that an election was not conducted in accordance with the law. But they went ahead to say that that illegality did not affect the result of the election in a substantial manner. Still, it goes back to the governance tool. The setup and the blustering of the Supreme Court or the judiciary, the way it is that actually people are working for promotions. You understand? There's nothing which you're going to find in the court system now. This, I will just give an example. Now, the appointment of judges in acting capacity. It was challenged in the court. The Constitutional Court agreed. Now, when the Attorney General appealed against that decision to the Supreme Court, the decision has not come out. When Justice Farida Bachira, when she was in Jinja, she gave a decision against Uganda Muslim Student Council of Mubaji. Then they had not actually confirmed there. They said you have been acting, you had gone through that, but now they put it on pending. She had to run all over. Then the only solution is to go and apologize to the person against whom he made the decision. Otherwise, he has complained to the president. And at first she was saying...
she was restored.
I'm coming to that. So I just went and apologized.
She apologized?
Yes, and then she was now reinstated now to be acting. When it came to the better application of Dr. Kizza Besigye, Justice Comfort Kania gave a decision which was saying that actually the application was in accordance with the law, the sureties were substantial, they have proofs of abode, but however I cannot grant the bail. So when people are saying, but then when we talked to one of the judges said that now, who can make a decision against the government when you're in acting capacity? That even in the now coming election petitions which are coming, they're all going to be allocated to judges who are in acting capacity. meaning that you don't expect a return of a decision by someone of that nature. We'll say the way the reason in the Dr. Message's petition for bail, that you qualify, but you're not going to bail. When you look at the commission, actually things they do, like when it came to, they're supposed to give away polling stations to rearrange and issue them. They did it before getting the number of people who registered, before they register an update. And if you look at in the West, where they teach people Runyankole, in the West, where you teach people Runyankole,
Where they speak Runyankole.
where they teach people Runyankole, most of the polling station averagely.
They learn it from their mothers. There is no institution of formal structure.
Okay, averagely, each polling station has 418 voters. Buganda and the Busoga now, most of them have 1,100 voters. Like in the Kawempe, which we just finished, because we were in charge of chairman. All the stations, when we did average, each station had 1,011 voters a station, meaning that in 7 to 4, there is no way people will vote in that hour. In terms of turn up, the place will be over-congested. So even by merely over-congesting stations within area where the current government has no support, it is clearly showing that actually they are trying to rig the electoral process. We have raised this with them. They say, what did you base on? They say, but even the population census was not clear. So we'll not take an action. So we're asking them, what did you base on to organize this? But by and large, even despite all those things, it is still the militarization of the process, which is the big issue. Before the Kawempe, I had the benefit of being in a meeting at the Electoral Commission with the commissioners to ask them that, are you in charge of this process? They were saying, you see, we are in charge, but the army can take over in some cases. I said, we come to tell you, you are wrong. Now, I was in my store with his friend, Dr. Simba.
He was the one in charge of Kawempe.
He was not in charge of Uganda. He was in charge of Uganda. Then he was in charge of Kawempe. He was also humiliated at the same place. He was the commission in charge of the process. By those people, taking his phone to check whether he has taken a photo. You understand? Meaning that nobody is safe in this entire process.
Not only is safe, but that the Electoral Commission is supposed to safeguard the votes. But as a state institution in charge of safeguarding votes is also to want to again.
Now, as I conclude on that one, now the issue is that you see people's powers, as the professor was saying, is only exercised once in 5 years when they are voting in terms of governance. You understand? That's when people get all their power and give it to individuals.
Which power do they have?
When you understand? And now that power is also taken away.
When they have
that the vote you cast cannot determine the outcome of the electoral process. You understand? Now that takes us, where is the power? That's what I was saying to. That's why you see, like when my brother Muhozi teaches people in Nyankole, to me is a clarion call to all of us to know that we belong to nation states. You understand? That's why a statement like from the son of the Saba Gavi, because the question would be, who would question a statement from the son of the Saba Gavi?
I heard Robert Chagulanyi wrote to the opinion leaders in Ankole and the elders.
But he didn't write to me.
So you see what we are saying, that you see the debate must start. That's what for me I'm saying. That do you know why people who come to do these atrocities mask themselves?
Yeah.
Because I've had instances like when we were attacked in Arua by-election, some tribes refused to participate.
In what?
In that violence, which was meted on us and the beating. They were saying, but these people are in the hotel. When they found us in the hotel, they have not found anywhere. And they also reprimanded. So you're going to find that a certain class of people, or group of people, like within the army, they don't actually engaging into these atrocities, those who teach Runyankole. You understand? Because other tribes are saying, look, but why should we make violence on people who speak the same language with us? That's why they come with masks. You understand? Like in our values as Basoga now,
No, don't
actually there are things we don't do.
Please don't associate all Wanyankore with
No, this is what I'm
violation
saying.
of rights.
This is what I'm saying. As Basoga, there are some values which we espouse and we don't go below those values. That's what the Basoga asks, go on this, ni on this, ni on Susan. You see, if you don't accommodate them and you don't feed them, you cannot tell them to engage in anything which violates their conscience. You understand? That's why we respect other people. That's why as a Basoga we have no problem actually with Banyankole knowing Runyankole and being Banyankole. Because we know we have other space and bases where we can interact as Basoga and Banyankole and Baganda without any issue. You understand?
Respectfully.
Now, yes, respectfully. And once you go into our space, that's why first we wish every well as Basoga, because we know that there's nobody who has no tribe. People hide under those things wanting to manipulate.
Even Banyankole respect others.
Some Banyankole respect.
Do not attribute
because apparently now
the problem of one individual to the whole community.
But you see, in the law, there's what we call the mind and the will of an organization. When you see the managing director of a company saying something or the corporation secretary, you would know that the mind and the will of that company is that. That's why even if I file the suit against
if he is a Katikiro,
yes,
that is okay.
What I'm saying, if I file the suit against Kia Limited and I came here to serve, I cannot serve on the Kirina. If a Kirina told me something, I know, because that would be effective service. But when I serve on the managing director, I would go home smiling from molar to molar. The service has been effective. So even in this case, where the Saba government,
it is okay.
But Banyankole accepted that now there's no Mugabe and the Saba government is the president.
No, he is not.
And now, that's what he says.
He's not.
That's the Saba government.
He is not.
And the son of the Saba.
In fact, I'm near being Saba government because I'm the chairman of Banyankole Cultural Foundation. So if I have not made that statement, why are you attributing it to Banyankole?
And now,
yes, as you sum up.
The son of Saba government comes up with the position. But I want to make it very categorical.
Saba government of Uganda, not of
Nkore. For me as a Musoga, I have no problem Banyankole being Banyankole and speaking Runyankole. But I have every problem in conferring, treating me in a very dehumanizing manner. You understand? In forcing me against my wish to colonize me again and take away my language,
your identity,
my identity,
and
because
autonomy.
The problem of Uganda, now we are speaking in English. But Professor, there's no country which has ever developed when they speak other people's language.
No, they do.
You understand? Because they're even thinking now that when you speak in English, when you speak in English, you actually intelligent.
And India.
You understand? Which is not correct. But they also, so it is high time we reclaim the knowledge space and base and the indigenous knowledge. So for us,
who has stopped you?
We have no problem. Now these people want to teach us their language. But by force.
It is not these people, it is this person.
Thank you, Honorable, for sharing your thoughts with us. Apollo.
Yes, sir.
What is your forecast going into the 2026 general election? Given the current trajectory, what do you foresee?
Of course, I foresee violence, especially targeting opposition, politicians and supporters. I am equally concerned that we members of the press will also
get your share.
The victims in that violence. That is why I'm sounding out a clarion call to people who have pulled back, who are not standing out to speak against these acts of violations of human rights. I call out Parliament, the members of Parliament. Why are they continuing to legislate when the laws they have enacted are not being respected, are not being effectively implemented? Why would you continue to legislate, to enact laws, when the anti-torture, we have a whole act on torture.
And torture is non-derogable.
Yes.
You cannot derogate
Universally.
Universally.
Why would you continue to continue to legislate when other laws are not being respected? I call out religious leaders. When this country goes up in flames, you'll shoulder the burden, because the people will be running to you. Why are you not speaking? His Excellency the President, I am sure what we are not freely speaking about is that President Museveni is the only person now whom we believe can reign on the CDF and other big people in this government. Why is he silent about these issues?
He's the principal, the son is the agent. Who acts through an agent for himself.
Why? And there is another group of people who look at this situation as an opportunity to eat, to benefit, to have access to public resources, to jobs. But how sustainable is this situation? That is why I'm saying, while we still have time to speak, let's speak. Until when we cannot speak, let's speak.
Thank you, Apollo. Professor, your closing remarks on the program.
My closing remarks are going to build on what he has been saying, is that we need to be citizens, not subjects. I think keeping quiet is actually accepting to be subjects when the Constitution says we are a republic and we are citizens. And if we do not speak out, I will emphasize my colleague's point, when things go wrong, we shall also be held accountable. But similarly, we would want to call upon the president also to speak out, especially where it comes to excesses, like the excesses of the security forces beating people while hooded, and the minister responsible for internal affairs, Kaindo Tafire, a whole general saying, even me, I don't know who these people are. He's a deputy who was a former army commander and a general also. That is the Minister of State for Internal Affairs. Also said, me, I don't know those people. I think the president, we really are appealing to him to do something. Otherwise, this is not right. And since he knows the Runyankore language, there is a saying that I'm going to speak it in Runyankore, maybe it can be picked.
You shall learn also.
You shall learn.
But voluntarily.
Voluntarily now is that nyine eka kwa byamiro rimi enyena zibyamire shabo. Nyine eka kwa byamiro rimi enyena zibyamire shabo. That if the leader of the family, the head of the family cannot speak out so that the children and other people can go and clean the house of the kraal of the young calves. The calves will sleep in their urine, because the head of the family was supposed to come home and say, you who is responsible for cleaning the home of the house of the calves? Clean it. If you don't say that, then the calves will sleep
And
in
eventually die.
their urine. So please, we appeal the president also to speak out so that I think people in responsible places of government should also be sensitive. It is not only the CDF General Moses Kainerugaba, it is also his minister Baram Baragahara. He also speaks insensitively. I have seen him speaking insensitively. He has just been a minister just yesterday, but he's speaking insensitively. And he thinks citizens, when they laugh, he thinks they are approving what he's saying. They are not. Baragahara, please. People are not approving those reckless statements you are making, because reckless statements can also cause trouble. The Bible says the tongue can also be dangerous.
You should applaud the chairperson of the Human Rights Commission. We should
For having at least
these people
the moral
who speak
courage.
out.
the moral courage to write that letter.
Honorable, your closing remarks.
Well, to me, two things are apparent. Is that one, we are looking towards the media as a fourth estate to carry out its role of scrutiny. I had been taken aback when we were in the Kawempe by-election, when the media houses had withdrawn their staff out of coverage. In fact, they had surrendered us to fate. And actually, if you realize,
You wanted them to die.
yeah, but we also there would have equally died when there was nobody to highlight.
We have a principle.
What actually was
No story is worth your life.
Actually, what was taking place, because we also as a citizens, we looked at it as an act of self-censorship. You know, we have been seeing how the media has been moving towards self-censorship, of course for survival, but that has not been sustained for some time. So we know the 2026 general election, the power that be, that's why they ask, what will you do? Meaning that they have put aside the Bill of Rights, suppressed and put aside. So whoever wants to participate, you know that actually you have no right in participation. For us, we are calling upon our people, and we have started as Ivasoga, that please make sure in our area we espouse our values. Don't go into the violence part. It has no benefit. Look at people in your area as people of Soga, people whom we will need tomorrow. And it started with even this election which were there, the NRM primaries. They used to be brutal so much in our area. But you see, whenever we seize an opportunity, even we talk to NRM people, that you see these things you do, the people come and make you do them after they leave. You cannot guarantee what will happen when they have left. You understand? So we encourage you to live in harmony with your people. It's not within our DNA as Masoga. You understand? To violate rights of others. Let those people who are doing it, do it.
Any tribe is capable of being peaceful and being violent.
You understand?
It's nothing like there is inherent traits in a tribe. No.
Yes. So for us,
That's wrong.
we have left it to those who have the monopoly to do it. We are calling upon our people to be there, to live as our values.
Everything
Thank you, Honorable.
is capable of doing wrong or right.
Your closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Isaac. I'm privileged to have an opportunity to speak to our viewers and to sit with on your distinguished panel. I can only hope for the best, and hope that the people who have authority can reflect on what could be the outcome
And be sensitive.
of their actions now. Thank you so much.
Many thanks indeed. I must appreciate you, my guests, Mr. Apollo Tsime, Honorable Paul Mwelu, and Professor Mwambusa Ndebesa for your able participation on today's edition of Focus on Parliament. Many thanks to our viewers. Thanks for watching and thanks for your time. Much appreciation to the production department. Thanks for keeping us live on air. Our esteemed viewers, please engage us on our various social media platforms. We are on X, we are on Facebook. you can always watch and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you next time. Be blessed.